We got Corey Brada on the line from the Hawkeye of the Storm right here on YouTube and also on your favorite audio platform. So along the same lines, Corey, got 3 stats concerning Iowa football from 2020. And again, these statistics are more valid in a normal 12-game season or 13 games. So the abbreviated season in the Big Ten, only 8 games for Iowa, but still, each one of these 3 statistics is extreme, meaning 2 of them extremely good and 1 of them extremely awful. 81.3%. So what that alludes to is that Iowa kept opponents off the scoreboard on 81+% of the offensive possessions in 2020. They allowed 17 touchdowns, 3 field goals, 107 drives. That was the best stop rate in the country.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you get with Phil Parker, COVID or not. I've said it before, I think on your show. He is the most underrated defensive coordinator in the country. I'm biased because I'm here, but he is terrific. And, I know we've ran through in the spring, we ran through concerns and positive takeaways from spring. And I am not concerned about the defense whatsoever. I know the secondary has gotten gouged at times in past seasons, but they have a lot of experience coming back. They got Matt Hankins back for an extra year. Was one of the few guys to come back for a kind of a COVID redshirt, if you will, type of year. Riley Moss is a guy that is back again as well. And then you've got Terry Roberts and you've got several other guys. Sebastian Castro's back there in the secondary. I don't worry about the defense. I mean, I have faith in Phil Parker. And if a fan doesn't have faith in Phil Parker after all these years, they don't understand how big of an impact he's made. Even when Norm Parker was the defensive coordinator, the impact that Phil made with that secondary, even back then, was tremendous. And now we're seeing it sort of become the norm under him, norm under Phil, no pun intended there. Defense is not a concern. Those numbers bear that out. And so it as it often does, it comes down to at Iowa, quarterback play. Can you control the offensive line, can you control the line of scrimmage on both sides really, but especially offensively, and get that running game going, which of course is going to do huge things for your passing game. And it's going to make things a lot easier on a young quarterback like Petras. But no, the defense it should be stellar again this year on all counts, I believe.
This statistic basically contributes to the previous statistic I just read, that Iowa has the best stop rate in the country. Iowa last year only allowed an explosive passing play on 1% of the dropbacks by its opponents. That was the best rate in the country.
Explosive play. That's Phil Parker's motto: limit explosive plays, take explosive plays away. And I know there's this kind of feeling around the Iowa program that Iowa's defense is the boring, running attack on offense, play action, passing, and then of course on defense, bend don't break. But I mean, it works. I mean, the numbers bear it out. I think back to I want to say 2017. Iowa, Penn State inside Kinnick, and Saquon Barkley ran for, I swear it was like almost 300 yards in that game. And yet Iowa should have won the game. I mean, Penn State racked up all kinds of yardage in that game. And had Iowa been able to get one final stop, had Amani Hooker gotten his hand up, another inch and deflected that ball that went into the end zone to Juwan Johnson, Iowa would have been 4-0. And who knows how that season would have changed. Of course, ended up being there were some great moments that year with the win over Ohio State. Had a chance against Wisconsin late in the year to kind of take control of the West. So that would have changed everything. So the bend don't break philosophy works, as much as people want to say it's boring. And the thing about it is too, I think sometimes you think that bend don't break means that you're always just going to allow a ton of yards to be racked up against your defense. And I think the turnover numbers, I don't have the stats in front of me, but Iowa's ability and Iowa's reputation for developing cornerbacks and even linemen sometimes that are picking balls off and and recovering fumbles. I mean, the turnover rate for Iowa's defense has been exceptional for many years. So bend don't break doesn't mean that Iowa's not going to grab turnovers. And so I don't know how any fan could complain about Phil Parker in this defense.
So on the flip side of that statistic about limiting explosive plays, and then coming off our conversation about what troubles that the Nebraska offense faces, Nebraska was in the bottom 5 in the nation in explosive plays in the passing game. Iowa was worse. They were in the bottom 3
offensively. I mean, that doesn't surprise me. And Spencer Petras' lack of ability to be on time with his receivers is going to be an issue. I mean, I don't know. I don't think Kirk Ferentz will stick with Spencer past game 1 or game 2 at the latest. If Spencer is not leaps and bounds better than he was the first half of last season, they're not going to die. I really believe that, and this is maybe being negative now, and people will call me a traitor to the program, but I do not believe that Iowa will be as dominant on the ground this year, even though I think Tyler Goodson will be better. They lose Mekhi Sargent, who very underrated for his contributions at Iowa, was a multi-year starter and then kind of took on that secondary role with Goodson last year, but kind of a change of pace guy. He's gone. And so they're going to need Petras to be able to make plays with his arm. And he was able to do that. He made a play or two against Illinois late in the year last year. He made a play or two, a couple big plays against Wisconsin that really sealed that game. But yeah, explosive plays are an issue. And it's not just been Petras. That's been an issue. And now, of course, they lose their 2 best playmakers on the outside in Brandon Smith and Demir Smith-Marset. So theoretically, that does not help the cause. He does have weapons coming back. What we saw in the spring, to me, was not any indication that he's taken that next step forward. The players and coaches will have you believe otherwise, that he's really reined in his accuracy. It's kind of the same deal with Nate Stanley on a maybe a grander scale. Nate Stanley had a huge arm. We saw what he was capable of against Ohio State, just his ability to, I think of the play to the back of the end zone. I don't know which defensive lineman it was for Ohio State that had him wrapped up. And I mean, he just slung a ball into the back of the end zone to TJ Hawkinson for a touchdown, was kind of almost indicative of his entire career at Iowa. He had the ability to make just unbelievable throws, and then he'd have the ability to make complete head-scratching throws, and that's sort of Petras on a larger scale. Huge arm, big body, but when a play breaks down, A, he doesn't have the ability to get out of the pocket and move, and B, he's just not consistent enough with his accuracy. And so I think fans should – I think as fans, Iowa – if you're an Iowa fan, you wish that Iowa could have a couple you wish that Colorado State came first this year. You wish it wasn't Indiana. You wish it wasn't Iowa State, because last year, that loss against Purdue was a killer week 1. I mean, it really hurt Iowa in the race. And of course, the Northwestern, though both those 2 losses were huge, and those are the only 2 losses. I get it, but once Petras was given some time to get his feet under him, he was able to develop. So you just hope that he comes out guns blazing, accurate game week 1 this year.
If Iowa doesn't blow a 17-0 lead against Northwestern, then they're playing in the Big Ten championship game opposite Ohio State. And even if they pull off the upset, they probably, because of the lack of games, don't get the nod for a college football playoff, but they are the Big Ten champions and headed to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, and if Brian Ferentz doesn't call 51 pass plays, maybe they can sustain that 17-0. That's the kind of thing that, going back to the coaching conversation, there's too many of those. There's not enough. Look at this. The Ohio State win in 2017 was a, hey, look at what Brian Ferentz did moment. There have been too many 17-0 blown leads against Northwestern, or single-digit outputs, or inability to run the football type games, that I think it's hurt his reputation. But you're absolutely right. It felt like Kirk Ferentz's world was kind of crashing in on itself at that point. I mean, coming off the offseason issues, the lawsuit. Remember, this lawsuit was announced by these former players the week before the Purdue game. You go into that Purdue game, that was a game they blew. Had it not been for a couple fumbles in that game and boneheaded plays, you're probably going to win that game. You lose, and then you blow a 17-0 lead. Things were really ugly with a quarterback who did not look comfortable at all. So I give Kirk a lot of credit, but you're absolutely right. Those two games affected the Big Ten race, and yet another moment in Iowa, Kirk Ferentz's history at Iowa. You wonder what if.
As we wrap it up here, Silent Elysium asks a question that may be a legitimate question. It is a legitimate question. I think some people ask these questions when we get certain programs on here just to kind of poke them a little bit, thinking they've never won a national championship. I'm going to ask them how many national championships they won. I'm looking at 5. Lewis Papp has commented in the live chat as well. And the topic of national championships in college football is one that, depending on my mood, either irritates me or delights me, because I love to dive into it and really dissect it. And I've produced 5 or 6 videos about disputed national championships, which to a certain degree, I believe that they all are. So claimed national championships for Iowa, we stand at 5, 1921, 22, 56, 58, and 60.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it? And I got ripped the last time I said the last time that Iowa had won a Big Ten championship was 2002, and it was actually the 2004 year. So I was going to kind of defer back to you on that. But yeah, I think when you get back into that era of the 50s and 60s with all these shared titles, it's harder to really gauge. I mean, honestly, I don't. When you're talking 60, 70 years ago, I I have a hard time really putting any stock into those numbers. Yeah, I'm not going to come on here and say that this is the year that Iowa changes that.